Should I start? Yeah. Well, okay. Thank you. Thank you, Manuel, for inviting me. It was a little bit of weird that I'm here because it happened because I told Manuel that it would be a terribly bad idea for me to talk about the academic career because I'm very critical of it, but he thought it was good. So I hope he still thinks it was a good idea at the end. Okay? So I'm going to start by a disclaimer, and it's that unlike the other three talks that we had that were very professional, this one is not, okay? I'm a very opinionated person. People know that already. And the talk is biased because it has to do with my experience too, and the people I have met in academia. So keep everything with a grain of salt, okay? Don't think that everything I'm saying are hard truths. There are a couple of things that are facts, and I will say the ones that are facts, okay? So let's start by introducing the topic. What is a professor? This is the official definition by the Oxford Dictionary, which is very boring, okay? Someone that works in a university in an entitled way. But the general idea, and I think it's more informative, is something that has to do things with knowledge. And in fact, Manuel, when he commented about the PhD program, he had this idea of knowledge in his mind. And the first thing that you need to be able to do is to acquire knowledge, okay? This happens also if you are a professor. You, for example, think of the AI revolution. It's hard to imagine anyone in engineering that doesn't know a little bit how AI works because it appears in every field. So you need to continually be able to acquire new knowledge. You are required to produce knowledge in the form of original research or grants or agreements that you have with companies. So you also need to be able to produce it. You need to be able to transfer it because you have teaching duties, at least in the university you have, and you also have PhD students, master students, people that you need to transfer knowledge to. And last, you have to gatekeep it too. You have to evaluate those students. You have to participate in tribunals of thesis. You have to referee papers for free because someone has to do it. And it's something that you also have to do. I have ordered from left to right from my favorite to least favorite. The order of the first three may change. I think the fourth is the worst for everyone. And there are other duties that you also are supposed to do, okay, that don't have to directly have to do with knowledge. One is that you need money to do all this, and you need to learn how to get it by applying to grants, and you need to administer it, okay, and spend it carefully. You also need to do the same with people. You don't have time to do everything yourself, so you need to use the money that you got before to get people that work with you and train those people, administer them a little bit like human resources. And finally, let's not forget that you will have to do a lot of paperwork, okay? And paperwork will also have an important take on your time. How this typically looks like for the first 8 to 10 years, you first start with a PhD. We had excellent talks on how the PhD experience looked like. I don't have much more to add. I think that in general, the most important part of the PhD is that you learn a lot. You are like an empty cell where people put new knowledge, and you also produce it, but the most important thing for you is that you should try to get as much as possible for yourself, which is learning it. Once you have this guy that learns a lot, if you want to stay in academia, one of the most common ways of achieving so is to do a postdoc, and in the postdoc, basically something that looks like this. You invest most of your time producing science. Now you are very proficient at that, and people have very, very productive postdocs in which they produce a lot of papers and things like that. You also have to start to think of teaching a little bit, because if you want to stay in academia, at least in Spain, you need to be proficient at teaching too. And then after this, there is something waiting for you down the line, which is a position of professorship that it has to be precarious by nature, okay? It doesn't matter, this is not something of Spain, it's in every country, it has a deadline. It's a contract for 6 years or for 3 years or something like that, but it's not something definite. It won't be an indefinite contract, at least in most places, okay? And you have tried to get out of there somehow, hopefully to a professorship, and your time at that point looks something like this, okay? Your main focus is getting money, getting people, signing many papers with your electronic signature, and teaching. They pay you for that, so you have to do it. You have to also evaluate people and be a member of tribunals. And if you have any time left, try to do research is also important because you should try to keep producing science, okay? Down the line for you waiting in the future, not part of this talk, there is a professorship. Someone else probably can talk better about that than me. So imagine that I haven't scared you, and you like this, you don't mind bureaucracy and stuff, and you decide, you think yourself as an academician, and I'm going to give you a collection of things that are waiting for you. This slide is pretty negative, but it's kind of true, okay? The first thing that I want you to know, and this is more or less of a fact, is that there is a prime for choosing academy as a career, and it's a negative prime, okay? You lose 100,000 euros in the 10 first years of your life if you choose to be an academician instead of starting a job at a company at the very beginning. And this number, I did it very carefully, okay, and it's quite accurate. On top of that, as you saw in the previous slide, every contract has an endpoint value. You have a lot of precariousness on the first at least 10 years of your life. Not having money and not having a stable contract can be very bad for stability, and some people actually cannot afford it, okay? In the US, it's very well known that people with a scholar debt, maybe they cannot pursue a PhD because they have to pay the scholar debt. It's something that simply you cannot afford, okay? So it's important to keep in mind that. The blue thing at the bottom of the slide before, the professorship, is something that a lot of people like, okay? And there are more people with PhDs, which is a requirement for professorship, than professorship positions. So it's a scarce market, okay? And it's very competitive because in principle it's a very global market by nature university, and anyone can apply in principle or are looking for jobs at academia. So it can get very competitive and is very scarce. And there is a race to it. There are few resources, lots of people, and there is a race to it. The term publish or perish is not mine. You can Google it if you want. And it's the idea that unless you have a very successful CV, and I added the quotes because it's not only publications, you have to publicate to get grants, you have to supervise students. Unless you're ticking all the boxes, it's perfectly possible for you to be left outside academia with no way to return. It happens not to a lot of people, but it can happen, okay? And there is a lot of pressure associated to this race. The combination of all the 4 items in this list before implies that, and this is a fact, okay? This I fact-checked, I did my homework before putting this on a slide. Prevalence of mental issues or job-life balance in academia is very high. It's not the highest, okay? Investment banking is worse. Consultancy, and Pedro can add to that later, is worse. But we come to a close third, which is not bad, okay? And finally, this could be a problem for some people. In the race, the part of the things that are assumed that you're going to do have to do with mobility and to be able to collaborate with a lot of people, do interdisciplinary things, and things like that. Are you out of the race for not doing them? No, you are not out of the race, but it's harder if you have some personal things that prevent you from moving away from a city that you like. So, all in all, maybe that slide is a little bit more discouraging than the previous one. The question is now, why do you see academicians all the time and why people choose this? And I must stress that me personally, even if I'm aware of the slide, I wouldn't change it, okay? I like academia and I would like to stay if possible, okay? And it's hard to explain it, and probably it's hard to explain it because it's not a rational decision. It's an irrational decision. And to me, the main thing has to do with this. I have several examples of this, but because of time, I decided to reduce it to only one, and I have kept the most personal. This is the only personal thing about this slide. This is a glacier lake in the Pyrenees. I was once visiting with some friends, 5 non-academicians, 1 academician. It sounds like a joke, but it's true. And when after 6 hours walking in the Pyrenees, we arrived there, and I was staring at the lake. And the only other person staring at the lake was this other guy. And we were looking like mad people, and I know what he was looking at. And I told him, I know what you're looking at. Is that the waves on the surface don't have the same size of the left of the lake and on the right of the lake. Either that, or the fact that there are fishes in that lake. And I have absolutely no idea how fish can get in there. And he told me, oh, I hadn't noted the fish before. So he was thinking about the waves, okay? And this is it to me. We are a bunch of broken people, pardon the term, that can only think about the stuff that we care, okay? In Manuel's presentation covered almost everything. Some people care about anomalous transporting devices. Someone wants to decommission satellites with a cable and the magnetosphere. The guy cares about flapping wing vehicles. everyone has something. Manuel wants to know why radiative forcing is poorly predictive by the models we have. Everyone is mad about something or driven about something. You can also be driven about the teaching or transferring part, okay? Some people like communication way too much, and they want to reach as much people as possible. But everyone is a little bit insane in that aspect. And to me, that's the main reason for anyone choosing this. And if you have it, you know it, so it's hard to, once you think that it's a good idea, it's very hard to think something different, okay? There are other perks of the work that I think are very good, maybe not as good as the first one, but that are important too. One is that freedom is probably the largest in this job compared to other jobs in the market. You choose what you research. That's why everyone does something different. You are free to decide how you manage your time to some extent, or what options you pursue. It's not forced on you, and it's not forced on you because typically very early in your career, you have no boss. You are your own boss. And that's something that is very attractive to a lot of people. Not everyone works with authority well. So if you are one person that is opinionated and cannot follow orders very well, maybe it's a good idea for you to stay in academia. The second thing is that the next time you stare at fish in the Pyrenees, you won't be alone, because this is a place where the probability of finding someone that also likes weird things is high. I'm not saying that everyone is like that or that no one is like that outside academia, but the probabilities are large, okay? So if you are curious about things, this is a good environment to be. It's also very personal. You sign papers yourself with your name. You apply to grants yourself with your name or a small team. If you found a spin-off, it's your name on it, okay? Many jobs, especially starting jobs early in your career, you form part of large groups, and they are not personal, and there is nothing of you in that job. That typically doesn't happen here, okay? Things are very personal, and that is attractive for many people. And finally, I know I had this as a disadvantage, but it can also be an advantage. Moving around is very easy. I have visited many countries in 10 years that I wouldn't have visited if I wasn't in academia. You can move to do research for short times to other places, and you're encouraged to do so. I think Fatima illustrated very well in her talk. So if this is something that you can do and is attractive to you, academia will provide, okay? And you will learn new things all the time, which is something that is typically attractive to some people too. And finally, we complain a lot of teaching. If you go through the corridors, complaining about teaching is our main source of entertainment. But it's true that sometimes teaching can be very gratifying. People who learn from other people typically are grateful about it, and sometimes research can be terribly frustrating. And the fact that you have to do both tends to balance each other, because the opposite is also true. And finally, because I'm that way, I wanted to remind you that not everything is positive. Bureaucracy is still there, okay? And it's always frustrating, okay? And that's all, okay? It's a very opinionated, a bunch of opinions on academia, but I think it helps, especially people who are now taking their PhD, to get an idea of what's down the line, okay? And I recall it that you shouldn't take it too seriously.